We'll make a beginning. We will start with those who joined, let the others join. I had stopped at in the last class, which was quite some time back, the two special types of capital issue which should actually have been taken in the previous chapter, but I put it off to this chapter so that I get a connected analysis. So that you have a chapter exclusively for issues of capital by public listed companies, and then all the other smaller issues of capital where we took up the case of a rights issue and a bonus issue. It is very interesting as an exercise to compare and identify the differences between the two and the similarities between the two. A rights issue and a bonus issue, what is common is both are to the existing shareholders only. And secondly, both are at concessional prices to the market price. But if a company is going for a further public offer to the public, then there are rules as to how you should price that public issue. What should be the price? So rights issue and bonus issue are both pampered issues because it is given to the existing shareholders, the company's own children first. Then it goes out if they don't want it, if they are not interested. So in a rights issue and a bonus issue, we have analyzed the provisions of the Companies Act 2013 and the rules contained there. And I told you that there are other aspects also, other legislations or statutes, which will also deal with this, like the SEBI. We have a SEBI buyback regulations. We have a SEBI issue and listing of debt securities regulations. We have a SEBI debentures exclusive regulations. So even the SEBI has interfered in issue of securities, but of course naturally that applies only to the listed companies. So after having analyzed two special types of issues, which are the rights issue and the bonus issue, we take up two others, which are again more or less in the nature of private placements. That is another thing which is common to all the four that we are taking up. They are all private placements, only to a specific category. The next, I think, you have taken it in the order of sweat equity. And then we would be coming to the ESOPs. So these are four smaller micro capital issues, which can be technically also called private placements because they are targeted at a specific group of investors only. Rights issue has a beautiful name, a synonym, preemptive rights, or the right of preemption. I explained the etymology behind the word. Preemptive means that the public are ruled out even beforehand. That means this is something which is actually meant for the existing shareholders. So all of them are basically the nature of preemptive or private placements. Now we move on to the next, which is the sweat equity or issue of sweat equity shares. I have seen printing errors in certain books where they use SWEET. This is sweat equity and not sweet equity. Sweat equity shares is a class of equity shares, as the name indicates. So basically, it is equity shares. And what is the peculiarity of equity shares? Voting rights. Voting rights is one. Non-clarity or vagueness, vagaries of dividend is another characteristic. So sweat equity shares are basically equity shares. Sweat equity shares are equity shares carrying voting rights. which are given to or offered to officers or employees of the company. The officers in the sense, it could be directors, it could be KMP, or any officer of the company which is engaged in the management. Or it could even be to employees. So employees are eligible for any of these. It could be a rights issue or bonus issue or equity. ESOPs. ESOPs is exclusively meant for them. Sweat equity shares are issued by a company to the directors, to the KMP, or to the employees of the company for providing assets to the company. Assets which are generally in the nature of intangible IPRs, patent, a know-how, a copyright, a license, something which an officer gets by exercising intellectual skills, selling that to the company. And he is compensated, he is paid in the form of shares of the company. So sweat equity shares are shares issued by a company to its officers, to its directors, key managerial personnel or employees to compensate them for having supplied certain intellectual property rights. There are conditions. In fact, sweat equity is also, like the others, dealt with by the SEBI also. So if it's a listed public company, please bear in mind SEBI ICTR regulations, which is beyond your scope. So the ICTR regulations also provide for conditions apart from what the Companies Act says. And the regulations for sweat equity are governed even by another regulation, which is the provision of benefits to employees regulations. It is called the SEBI Employee Benefits Regulations. ESOPs will definitely be covered by that completely. So that one guideline of the SEBI will deal with both types, sweat equity and ESOPs. Now, before I come to the conditions which the Companies Act prescribes, I wanted to get the logic first. Okay, so shares in the form of equity, remember I already have a huge section, a population called my present equity shareholders. Now I am making a further issue of capital. I am making a private placement exclusively to the category called officers, KFP, directors or employees for having provided a part of something that they have developed by sweating it out. That's why sweat equity. Now, an asset which is provided in the form of intellectual property rights is something which is acquirable from outside also, or the director can also supply it outside. So let us say it is a director who is being given sweat equity shares for having donated to the company or supplied to the company any asset in the form of intellectual property rights. Obviously, the first condition is an approval by special resolution. Remember, I already have a population of existing equity shareholders. If at all I have to make a fresh issue of capital, section 62 already says you have to offer to the existing shareholders first. So if you want to make a private placement like this, get the approval of your existing members. They shall approve it through a special resolution, giving all the terms and conditions. What will be the price? who are the selected employees or key managing personnel officers, etc. What is the basis of supplying it to them or giving the issue, making the issue to them? All those specific terms and conditions shall be laid out through a special resolution. Again, I don't mind repeating it. Whenever I say special resolution, it is always preceded by a board resolution. But we always straight away start with special resolution. So the existing shareholders must agree to, number one, the facts, and number two, all the terms and conditions attached to it. Now, there is a condition that the sweat equity shares may be issued only after at least 1 year has expired from the company's commencement of business. Which means that a company cannot make the first issue of capital as a sweat equity. So there must be a gap of at least 1 year from the date that the company has commenced the business. Then only you can make a sweat equity. This is the second condition. Now the third condition, I will connect this with something that we have already seen before. We have seen that sweat equity shares is the only class of shares which may be issued at a discount. I made a connection, I made a relationship in the last class talking about when you say discount, I am referring to discount to face value. If there is a 100 rupee face value share of a listed public company having a ruling market price of 365, it may be issued at less than 365, but not less than 100. In fact, that is what happens in a rights issue, and I was connecting that with your accounting standard 20, the theoretical X rights fair value. What is the basis, what is the calculation which a shareholder makes in making his choice or decision whether to accept, reject, or renounce a rights issue? Because the shareholder will calculate his total net wealth and the cost of acquiring that net wealth in the form of shareholding in the company. What is its acquisition price and what is its market price? The larger the gap, the greater is the possibility that the shareholder will accept a rights issue. So similarly here, this is the only class of equity shares which a company can issue at a discount. I will come to the logic why a little later. So these shares may be issued at a discount. Now, there was a provision which has now been removed, it's an amendment, that this is applicable only to the permanent employees on the rolls. If you are giving to the employees, so this is a condition which is applicable to both. It is not necessarily only to the permanent employees or employees who have worked with the company at least for 1 year. All those conditions are gone. So you need a special resolution. At least 1 year has expired from the commencement of the business, and this may be issued at a discount. Now, there is a condition that the asset which is being taken over, against which these shares are issued, must be valued by a registered valuer. Remember, you're taking over an intangible asset. The company is taking over an intangible asset. What is the value of that intangible asset, which the director or the key managing person or the employee claims? Must be certified, it must be authentic. So to establish the authenticity of the asset taken over, of the asset acquired by the company, in return for which the shares have been issued. It must be certified by a registered valuer. There is a section 247 of the Companies Act 2013, which is very lately, very recently, in other words, published as applicable. Registered valuers. A new line of professionals is coming up. Valuation professionals. They need to pass an examination, they need to have a certificate. Such persons are employed whenever a company requires to carry out a valuation exercise. For example, at the time of amalgamation, at the time of, let us say, entering into a joint venture, or valuing the shares of the company when you are making a publication. There are so many valuation exercises necessary by a company during its lifetime. So after section 247 has been notified by the Ministry of Company Affairs, a registered valuer is the professional you have to approach to get a certificate that the valuation made for a particular purpose is authentic. It is correct. So the asset which is being taken over by the company shall be valued by a registered valuer. And based on that value, the pricing of the shares, the quantity of the shares, number of shares, etc., is decided. So these are certain conditions which have been inserted by the Companies Act and the Companies Rules. Special resolution, 1 year, may be issued. I'm not saying it should be issued, may be issued at a discount, and it has to be valued by a registered valuer. Then these shares can be issued. Now, coming to all the others, I suppose are easy to understand, except for this one particular part, that the shares may be issued at a discount. What could be the logic behind it? Can anybody think of it? Suppose I pose the question to you first. And then if I were to answer it, why? How is it that you can make an exemption to the basic philosophy of Companies Act and allow a company to issue equity shares at a discount to face value in respect of sweat equity shares? What is the reasoning behind it? Why is it like that? Why is it that any other issue of capital cannot be issued at a discount, but this can be issued? Now, that is one catch. That is one thing you need to understand. It is to bind that officer or the employee or the, the director to the company by virtue of this sale. I'll take an example to illustrate this. Let us say we are dealing with an oil, petrol industry company. Let us say BPCL, Bharat Petroleum Corporation Limited. Natural gas, crude oil, petroleum products, diesel, etc. Prospecting for it, searching for it, and supplying it. Let us say the director of research. There's a department called Research and Development in BPCL. So I'm dealing with the research and development wing of an oil sector company, BPCL. The director in charge of R&D is a genius, brilliant guy. He's a geologist, or he's a social sciences expert, or he's a soil expert. Let us say this director has developed a very innovative kind of a fuel which can be, let us say, used by helicopters. Helicopters in a planes are using the fuel in the payroll. It is called the ATF, air turbine fuel, also called white kerosene. Very costly. In fact, when we purchase a flight ticket, 70% of it is towards that fuel surcharge. are വളരെ costlier. And naturally, an aeroplane or an aircraft cannot go to a petrol bunk for fueling up. The petrol bunk has to come to the plane. You will see this in the airports. Those who have traveled by plane, at least ones will know this. You will see these vehicles of oil companies running in the premises of the airports. They are fueling up the planes. In fact, when you board the plane, the fueling will be going on. The plane will be being fueled. Such a director has identified a very innovative, cost-effective, and very efficient fuel for helicopters, which can be developed through a mix of multiple products or elements. So he has a design, he has a formula, and he is the director of BPCL. Now BPCL would love to have this formula or design, but now that is patented. So this research and development director has invented it. Now it is between the director and the BPCL. BPCL would love to have that formula from him. And the director says, why should I give it to you? What is the benefit that I will get? I will supply it outside. So in order to get it, to get the copyright from the director, the companies are allowed to issue it at a discount. So going back to my old example, let us say shares of face value 100 having a market price of, let us say, 360. The company proposes to offer it for 115 rupees. This is the offer price. Again, that director or that employee or that key managing person will make the same comparison. Of course, he will not be paying for it, he will be giving that patent. So whatever is the value of that patent, as valued by the registered valuer, can be divided by 115, and you decide the number of equity shares. Now, if I can reduce this 115 to 85, it's a bigger attraction for the director or the key managing person or the employer. So what happens? The director or the employee of the KMP will get more number of shares having a higher market price, so that the company can ensure that this director gives that formula only to the company. But then you need to understand, I don't know if I explained this to you before, I think I have in some context before, but I don't mind repeating it. A copyright and a patent rights. You need to understand a little bit of legal terminology. Copyright and patent, people usually feel that copyright is for books, music compositions, whereas patent is for inventions. It is not like that. The difference is completely different from what you are thinking. A patent right is for the original. A copyright is for the person who wants to duplicate it. That is why it's called copyright. The right to copy is copyright. So let us say this director who has invented a new fuel, the moment he does it, he will approach the central government. He will tell the central government, I have invented such a new thing and I want to make this commercially viable or want to supply it to the commercial sector. The central government will depute its experts and see whether what he is saying is true, whether this thing has some commercial value, whether it is really a product which is new or he is taken from somewhere else and he is saying this place. So after the central government verifies that, the central government will give him a patent right. The moment he gets this patent right, he will make an announcement. I have the patent for manufacturing this. Anybody who's interested, contact me. I will give you the copyright if you pay me a royalty. Every unit that you produce using this formula, using this design, or this manufacturing technology, give me so much as a royalty. Then I will give you a copyright. So, a copyright is given by a patentee. A patentee is a person who has a patent from the government in connection with some novel idea or technology or design or product. So once this director of research and development gets that patent right, in order to allow the company, I'm using my words very carefully, in order to allow the company to get it from the director, to make it as attractive as possible, we are allowing the companies to issue it at a discount. So issuing sweat equity shares at a discount will ensure that the supplier of the patent or the copyright, he is also happy. He gets more number of shares, for which the market price is pretty high. So the same principle as our good old theoretical X rights fair value. The calculation based on which a shareholder decides whether to accept or reject or renounce an offer. So this is the essential condition apart from the others which we are familiar with. These two are pretty new. It may be issued at a discount, and the asset which the company is taking over as an intellectual IPR is properly, decently valued by a registered bank. But after the whole process is over, remember the journal entry which the company is going to pass is asset account data to equity share capital account. But what is it which is done in these two cases? In the case of bonus, it is reserves account data to share capital account. In case of rights, bank account data or cash account data to equity share capital. So in all of them, the credit is equity share capital. The debit varies. What comes into the company is what varies from situation to situation, issue to issue. So this is the logic, or this is the concept of a sweat equity. So I have to convince my existing shareholders that this patent is valuable, this copyright is valuable. I'm getting it from such and such a director. Please accept these terms and conditions through a special resolution. So the shareholders should also be able to realize and understand the value of the asset which the company is going to get. And once the company gets that intellectual property right, it gets a big leverage in the market. So this is to attract talent in the form of intellectual skills of certain directors or key managerial personnel or employees. Sweat equity is never issued to an outsider. If at all the equity shares are issued to an outsider in connection with intellectual property rights, that is nothing but an issue of shares or consideration of the cash. So this is our third type of special issue being a private placement. Okay, so take it down. The third category, number 3, sweat equity shares. Number 1 was rights issue. Number 2 was bonus. Number 3, sweat equity shares. Sweat equity shares. Sweat equity shares. A company may a company may issue a company may issue equity shares. A company may issue equity shares to its directors, KMP, KMP, or employees, in return for the acquisition of, in return for the acquisition of special assets, including intangible intellectual property rights, intangible intellectual property rights. Okay, full stop. Such a private placement is subject to the following conditions. Subject to the following conditions prescribed. Following conditions prescribed under the Companies Act and rules. Under the Companies Act and rules. Whenever you're writing Act and rules, I suppose you're putting it in capitals, A and R. Under the Companies Act and rules. Okay, 1. The issue shall be approved. The issue shall be approved by a special resolution. The issue shall be approved by a special resolution. Of the company at a general meeting. Special resolution of the company at a general meeting. Okay, that's what I got. The special resolution. Number 2. Such an issue shall be made by the company. Such an issue shall be made by the company only after the expiry of at least 1 year. Only after the expiry of at least 1 year From the commencement of business. From the commencement of business. Okay, number 3. Sweat equity shares may be issued at a discount. Sweat equity shares may be issued at a discount. Okay, so that was the logic I was explaining why. It is to ensure that the director gives it to the company. The company is trying to give all kinds of attractions to the director to give it to the company only. Okay, so that is 3. 4. The asset acquired by the company, shall be valued. The asset acquired by the company shall be valued by a registered valuer. Shall be valued by a registered valuer. Okay, so that was condition number 4. Add the 5th one, number 5. A listed company is additionally required to comply with applicable SEBI regulations. Okay, so there are at least 2-3 SEBI regulations which will deal with this matter. So the Companies Act 2013 decided to interfere when a company is going to issue shares for consideration other than cash to its internal people. Internal people in the form of directors, key managerial personnel. Although employees are not technically insiders, since you are working for the company on a 24/7, 365 basis, I say insiders. Remember, in my hexagon, the employees are actually outsiders. So it might be a director who is this intelligent, or a KMP who is intelligent, or an employee who is intelligent. Such geniuses, in order to retain their intellectual products, a company issues sweat equity shares, and that may be allowed at a discount. So I will not be repeating this again. Whenever I use the word discount, issue at a discount, I'm always referring to discount to face value. Don't consider this to be a discount. Actually, a discount is discount. So when I say this discount to be face value. That is what is prohibited under the Companies Act, with this one particular exception. So this is about the sweat equity shares. Now coming to the next and the last special type of an issue, it is the ESOPs. Now what are the conditions? What are the provisions applicable to ESOPs? That we come to next. And all this goes back to that basic background of the definition of a private company. Section 2, subsection 68 of the Companies Act 2013. Private company means a company which, by its articles, restricts the transferability of its securities, the number of its members to a maximum of 200, and 3, restricts any invitations to the public for subscription to shares in or debentures of the company. There, when you say the number of employees is restricted to 200, there are two complications. Joint shareholders are treated as one, which is an incentive. And number 2, employees of the company, past employees or present employees who are members of the company, shareholders of the company, are exempted. I was telling you, this is the Indian reflection of the Japanese attitude towards employees. We have copied that culture. Japan is a country which pampers its employees, because the basic nature of an employee in Japan is that he is hardworking. Whereas in the United States, employees are considered filth, dirt. It's a very bourgeoistic economy or government that the US has. It's a cultural difference. So the concept of ESOPs actually came in Japan. So when you say the employees who are members of the company are excluded, that is because of this. Employees become members of the company through the ESOPs. Now it is a fact that there is a divorce in the shareholding pattern of a company or the running of a company. I have one population called shareholders who come to the company only once in a year, and even their attendance is pretty thin, and we call them the shareholders. Shareholders have voting rights but zero knowledge about the company. Some of them might be only speculators. On the other hand, I have a population called the employees or the workers who know everything about the company but don't have the voting rights. So there is a very conflicting, contradictory kind of populations that a company serves. Japan decided, why don't we bridge this? Those who vote should be those who know about the company. So instead of having two wide populations, I have 300 shareholders, I have 750 employees. Instead of this, why don't we intersect the two populations? That is how the concept of ESOPs came. And when employees or workers are given shares in the company, that too equity shares, they can participate in decision making. They will earn dividends. They will get capital gains on the shares of the company which they have acquired and sold. So their commitment towards a company increases. Again, another commitment drive, just like sweat equity. The P here is for plan and S here is for shares. Employee stock option plan or employee stock option shares scheme. Even there are many differences between them. In fact, your accounting standard 15 deals with this. You must have done that in accountancy. Again, here I am giving you the legal background to what you've done in accountancy. In the accounting standard, through the accounting standard. About an employee stock option plan, shares given under an employee stock option plan is another form of a private placement. My target population, the target investor group is small. It is the smallest impact. It is the employees of the company. Again, if I go by the conditions, we have the first condition that my existing shareholders will approve it. My existing shareholders will give me a special resolution giving me the permission to do it as a director and also the terms and conditions to do it. So obviously the special resolution is preceded by a board resolution at a board meeting. But we never mention that, we always start with special resolution. So the issue of sweat equity shall be authorized, approved, permitted by a special resolution of the shareholders of the company at a general meeting. That's the first condition. The next condition here, of course, all the terms and conditions will be the price, the time within which it must be completed. How do you identify the employees who are eligible for it? In fact, I'll give it to you as a note later after finishing. This is something which is common to both sweat equity and ESOPs. What are the terms and conditions which the shareholders will specifically provide for in that resolution? So this is the second. The second condition here would be that ESOPs are issued only to employees as per the terms and conditions, which are laid down in the special resolution. So that will come to it as a separate note later. Again, if it is a listed company, let me not forget, you have the SEBI regulations. Even here there are SEBI regulations, ICDR, employee benefits. There are SEBI employee benefits regulations or share-based employee benefits regulations. So that has to be satisfied. Then there is a particular aspect or a particular duration. Just like I used a term for buyback, I used a technical word called cooling period. Similarly, here you have an aspect called the vesting period. The vesting period is technically 1 year. That comes to budget now. In other words, an ESOP's issue must be kept open for at least 1 year. So if I am an employee of a company, I have been selected for ESOPs, the company will give me an option of taking it or rejecting it within 1 year. So 1 year is a huge time horizon. That 1 year when at any time the employee can accept it is technically called the vesting period. So some employees within 1 month they say yes I want it. Or there might be some employees within 2 months they say no I don't want it. Again, it's a question of comparing the face value with the market price with the issue price. Again, it is the same comparison, the same calculation which will drive the decision. That is the decision maker. Again, higher the market price, higher the gap between the market price and the issue price, higher the possibility of accepting it. So an ESOP's issue made by a company shall be kept open for a period of 1 year during which the shareholder can continuously keep comparing these prices and decide. Now, once it is offered to an employee, the next condition, it is exclusive to that employee. In other words, this is not assignable. An employee cannot renounce it. Again, here we use the word assign. The employee cannot assign it to any other person, not even to another employee. So this offer is exclusively designed for them. It can be accepted only by them. Now, the terms and conditions here, remember, the employees are paying for it. These are shares which are paid for. So an employee will accept the shares and pay for them to the company just like a rights issue. So in the case of what do you say, a employee stock option, it is only meant for the employees. The employees can't assign it. They have 1 year to make a choice, and at the end of it, it must be paid for. They take the shares and pay for it to the company. Now, there's a very important condition that the company shall register the shares. Let us say about 1 lakh shares are open under a scheme of ESOPs. Those 1 lakh shares will be registered in the name of an employee only after his decision. In other words, unless an employee says that he is accepting it, you can't register the shares in his name. He cannot be recognized as a member of the company. Which means that it is mandatory for the shareholder to convey a yes. So, during the vesting period, at any period of time, the employees can take the shares, pay for them, and get them registered in his name. So these are the conditions which are prescribed under the Companies Act and the Companies Act. Again, looking at the logic behind, what is the logic behind ESOPs? The logic is only to merge my two diverse populations. One population of people who vote but know nothing. Another population of people who know everything but have no voting rights. They don't have a say in the management. They can't participate in decision making. So in order to merge these two populations, that company is in paradise where its entire share capital is held by the employees only. Wow. You can call that company as perfectly competitive. Employees are the shareholders. Employees are reaping all the benefits of the company because ultimately it percolates to them. Employees are the persons who deserve a share of the profit of the company. They are responsible for the daily running of the business. They are actually at the executing end. Directors are the administrative end. And shareholders are at no end. I told you, only once in a year or once in 15 months they come for a meeting. And even in that meeting, the M is silent. Only eating goes on. So if my employees who know the company at the grassroots level, they know all the problems of the company, they can come up with constructive solutions. If they become my shareholders, then nothing like that for a company. That's the best situation. Okay, so that is about the ESOPs. Come to that next. Number 4. And you write it in full first, then put the abbreviation in brackets. Employee stock option plan or scheme. Employees stock option plan or scheme. EMPLOYEES apostrophe. Employees stock option plan or scheme. A company may issue shares on a private placement basis a company may issue shares on a private placement basis exclusively to its employees. Exclusively to its employees. Subject to provisions of the Act and the rules. Subject to provisions of the Act and the rules laid out below. Act and the rules laid out below. Okay, 1. The issue shall be approved by a special resolution of the company at a general meeting. The issue shall be approved by a special resolution of the company at a general meeting. Number 2, a listed company shall, comma, in addition, comma, comply with the SEBI, open brackets, share-based employee benefits, within brackets, share-based employee benefits, close brackets, regulations. Okay, so that is for a listed public company. Number 3, an issue offered to employees shall be kept open for a period of 1 year. Shall be kept open for a period of 1 year. Comma, technically called the vesting period. Technically called the vesting period. Okay, full stop. Continue there. The employee shall exercise his option during this period of 1 year. during this period of 1 year. Okay, then number 3 or 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Equity shares issued under ESOPs. Equity shares issued under ESOPs are exclusively meant for the employees only, are exclusively meant for the employees only. That is, they are not assignable. They are not assignable. Okay, the next. The company shall register the shares. The company shall register the shares in the name of the employees shall register the shares in the name of the employees only after they have exercised the option. Only after they have exercised the option. And not before that. And not before that. Okay, so these are the conditions which are exclusive to the employee stock option aspect or that particular type of private placement of capital or issue of capital. Again here, what is the debit entry? The debit entry is cash or money, just like in the rights issue. So remember, an employee is eligible for ESOPs as well as sweat equity. But depending on which is the route through which he has got the shares, whatever be the route, he becomes a member. It is only from the company's perspective how an employee becomes a member of the company. Right? So this is the most ideal situation. We traded in stock order, definitely. What do you mean by traded? Now, this is a question. Can the ESOP shares be traded on the stock exchange? Now, this one question leads to so many other aspects, which I've been postponing. But now that the question has come, let me explain this connection between listing and ESOPs. For that matter, Shruti, even sweat equity, you should have got this down for sweat equity, you should have got this down for bonus issue, you should have got this down for rights issue. Now, I will settle it once and for all. Remember, when a company, now that the question has come, and that needs a little explanation, I remember to come to this note at the end of this. The question is, can ESOPs be traded on a stock exchange? For trading on a stock exchange, what is the basic condition? Listing. Now, Although it's a complicated, it is a concept which is slightly high for you, I can bring it down to your level. I'm explaining the meaning of the word listing here. Listing is the basis for trading on stock exchange. Remember, very few professionals know this or use it correctly. The word listing is actually not for the company, but for the issue. People say listed company, listed company, listed company. But it is not a company which is actually listed. It is the issue of shares. I'll take an example to illustrate this. A company has an authorized capital of 1 crore rupees. Out of this, there has been one tranche issued. So today the company's issued capital is 40 lakh rupees. As a rights issue, a company is making an issue of 30 lakhs. Remember, this 30 lakhs also must be listed. ഈ 40 lakhs ഇഷ്യൂ ചെയ്തപ്പോൾ അത് ലിസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യണം. ഈ 30 lakhs ഇഷ്യൂ ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ അത് ലിസ്റ്റ് ചെയ്യണം. Similarly, when a company which is a public listed company, that is, it already has its securities listed, obviously the ESOPs which is issued will be listed. Now, listed on a stock exchange doesn't mean that it is publicly held. Take the case of a very small shareholder. Imagine I am a shareholder holding 100 shares of Reliance. My shares are also listed. Now, what do you call it? My shares are the company's shares. The shares of the company which I own are listed. They are available for trading. In other words, I am also now a public seller. Anybody can buy it from me. So automatically, by saying that the shares of a company are listed, it means they are on the platform for selling. But when you say unlisted, that means it is not freely transferred. That means I have a series of approvals to be taken if those shares have to be transferred. And that could be subject to out of the world conditions. Like if you hold for 4 years, then only you can transfer. You want to transfer, you have to transfer to another member of the company only. If you want to transfer, you should be able to sell it for 850 rupees. Otherwise, you should not sell. All these conditions do not apply to the listed shares. It's a free, open market. So in other words, suppose this 30 lakhs is made by a company as a private placement, rights issue on, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ bonus issue on, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ sweat equity on. അതും list ചെയ്യണം. So every series of shares which is issued to the public has to be listed. Therefore, it's a very important concept that listing is not for the company. Listing is for the capital, for the issue of capital. In other words, when 40 lakhs of capital has already been issued, the next 30 lakhs of capital which you are issuing now will not be automatically listed. But then, if this 40 lakhs is already listed, you already have made a listing agreement, you just have to update the company's KYC with the stock exchange. So subsequent listings become easier. Followed it? So what I'm trying to tell you, Shruti, is this you should apply to every issue of capital. Bonus issue on, other tradable on, rights issue, other tradable on, only if they are listed. So in the listing concept, we just remember that, don't make a note of it. If you've already done, fine. The word listing, I'm just explaining the concept of listing. Listing applies to an issue of capital and not to the company as such. Right, now I want to bring out a note here exclusively for sweat equity and ESOPs as to what are the terms and conditions which the shareholders have to approve to through a special resolution. In other words, whenever you say approved by the company through a special resolution, remember it is all the terms and conditions which is exclusively for that issue. Remember a special resolution, I used a word for it, it's an OTP. Whereas your articles gives you a profile password. So an OTP should give you all the details exclusively for that particular activity or transaction, or what we call it a corporate action. So in the meeting, what are the things which will be proposed by the directors and approved by the members? We'll make a list of that. Now again, it's a little too early. You will come to this in the chapter on meetings and proceedings. But I just lay down a background now. Whenever there is a general meeting at which a special resolution is proposed to be passed, or whenever there's a general meeting at which a special business is to be transacted, definition for special resolution, special business, we're coming to later. For the time being, we say special resolution is 75% approval. So, if at all a special resolution is proposed to be passed at the meeting or proposed to be presented, tabled before the shareholders, the notice for the meeting should be accompanied by an annexure, which is called an explanatory statement. That explanatory statement will lay down all the terms and conditions. My dear shareholders, these are the things on which we need your approval. Remember always the period for which, or what will be the duration of the vesting period, or for example, if the sweat equity, what will be the consideration for the shares? That is not decided at the meeting. All those things are decided by the board beforehand. And all these are intimated to the shareholders also beforehand. Otherwise, imagine that it's a waste of time. So it is not the directors will sit in front of the shareholders and say, price and no. This is decided way in advance. So that at the meeting, the shareholders only have to say yes or no. And how do they say yes or no? Raise your hands. It's called voting by show of hands. Only if that is unclear, a voting is taken on board. All that is coming in the chapter meetings and proceedings. The most interesting chapter in company law. Every single contingency has been considered by the Act. The beauty of the Companies Act 2013. You will understand when we come to that chapter, meetings and proceedings. Okay, so we'll make a note on what are the specific points in an ESOPs or a sweat equity which the shareholders have to pass resolutions on. Remember, each aspect has to be specially resolved on. Vesting period in a resolution. Price in a resolution. Yedake employees are in a resolution. Every aspect, one separated. You can combine everything to one resolution. Okay, so take this as a note in the next slide. In the margin, note. Note. The special resolution prescribed for the issue of sweat equity shares The special resolution prescribed for the issue of sweat equity shares or ESOPs will contain an approval of the members on various aspects including the following as an illustrative list. I'm not saying it is complete. Including the following as an illustrative list. Opposite of illustrative is exhaustive. As an illustrative list. Okay. 1. Number of shares and the issue price. Okay. 2. Employees, directors or KMP. Employees, directors or KMP who are eligible for the same. Okay. 3. Offer period. Okay, that is the period for which the offers get open. For example, if it is ESOPs, we call it the vesting period. What is the vesting period? Next, options available to the offerees. Options available to the offeree. Remember, I told you, these members of a company are not chartered accountants or company secretaries or cost accountants. They don't know when a rights issue is made. You must tell them you have an option to accept it, you have an option to reject it. So the option must be described clearly. Okay. Next, now whatever we receive number next, consequences or effects of an option. Okay, next, nodal officer to be contacted. Nodal officer, that could be a director also. Nodal officer to be contacted. Okay, next, valuation certificate. Wherever required. Okay, lastly, just take one more. Whether any director or KMP, whether any director or KMP is interested in the issue, in any way, etc. So there are so many things which must be included in the explanatory statement. These are the things on which the shareholders or the members of the company have to vote, that to convey their approval. Okay, so what are the various things which the shareholders must be intimated? Some will be only for information, some will be things on which they have to give an approval. So far, whenever I have been using the word special resolution, I only said special resolution on the various terms and conditions. What are those terms and conditions in individual contexts? Again, I repeat what I've been saying. Suppose there is a question asked in the examination asking you for the procedure. I want you to design it. Put yourself in the position of a company secretary. For example, if a company is making a bonus issue, what you have to do step by step. And everything begins with a board resolution. Or some students who are even more imaginative will start with, does the articles of the company authorize? Verify whether the articles of the company is authorizing, if you need articles authorization. Then board resolution, then the special resolution, then taking the approvals whichever is necessary, updating your documents. So all those, whatever we have been studying, your actual ability when it comes to corporate law, I'm not just saying company law. With respect to corporate law, proceduralizing things or concepts is more important, especially at the final level. So you develop that custom or that habit now for every single aspect that you study. How will you do it as a company secretary? How will you move about? How will you proceed? What are the things you will do first, next, and after that, and so on? Secretarial procedure is important. Remember, even for an auditor, that secretarial procedure is important. An auditor audits a fresh issue of capital based on that procedure. He should know the procedure. So you have to, as an auditor, you have to verify whether those things have been done in that order. Was this approval taken? Was this approval taken? Was this document filed? Was this register maintained? So all these things, only if you know the procedure, you can verify whether that procedure was complete. Right? So these are the four special types of issue of capital. Look at the difference between what we saw in our previous chapter. That was the entire procedure for an issue of capital by a public listed company. So going by the question Shruti asked some time back, you have to incorporate that also in all this. That is why I said also refer to the SEBI regulations, because each of these issues has to be listed also. So before you even go for the company's resolution, you will have to inform the stock exchange. Informing the stock exchange, again, that's only for information. Stock exchange doesn't have the right to tell you, yeah, you can go ahead with it or you can't go ahead with it. You only intimate, just like the registrar. But then, if certain approvals which are required under law have not been taken, they have the right to refuse it or reject it. Okay, so these are the four special types of issues of capital. Of course, apart from other securities, maybe debentures, bonds, GDRs, etc. We'll come to the debentures a little later. So, four special types of issues. What is common to all of them? All of them are private placements of capital. Private placement means placement to a special category of investors only. Now, we have a very, very important area to take up. I think we'll take a break and continue. We'll take a break of about 10 or 15 minutes and then continue. I will be taking up in my next session alteration and reduction of share capital. Very, very important areas. This is technically what you call internal reconstruction in your company accounts. So I need a lot of your accounts. Anyway, we'll take a break and come. Memorandum, we have done it in various stages. Similarly, the articles also, like the nature of the document, the contents of the document, the form of the document, is it mandatory, is it a public document? So in that, go to the aspect on amendment of the memorandum. It is, I think, our chapter 3. Amendment of the memorandum. We have done it clause by clause. If you are amending the name, what you have to do. If you are shifting the registered office or the situation clause, what you have to do. Changing objects, changing capital. That clause I want you to see. You have written there by the side. When it comes to amendment of the capital clause, refer to the chapter on the concept of shares and share capital. We have come to that now. So we are exclusively dealing with the concept of amendment of the capital clause or alteration of capital, modification of share capital account. There could be different forms of modification. And there are two sections involved here. One is 61 and the other is section 66. 61 deals with alteration of share capital. 66 deals with reduction of share capital. Okay, so now come back to where we are. You have finished with the concept of the ESOPs. After that, give a heading. It is the same chapter. Give the heading. Alteration of capital by a company. Alteration of capital by a company. Okay. Now, like I have been doing in most of these complicated concepts, let me start with an example. Before we start, mention in the margin. This is why I made you give the heading, so that we make the cross reference now. Mention in the margin, refer amendment of capital clause in chapter 3. Write that in the margin. Refer amendment of capital clause in chapter 3. Chapter 3 was memorandum and articles of association. Okay, also mention, after you've given the heading, your page looks like this. You mentioned alteration of share capital. You mentioned here refer amendment of capital clause in memorandum. You have given this as a heading. Mention now below that. Refer chapter on internal reconstruction in accounts. So I wanted to connect this with two things that we have studied. I don't know whether you've covered this in accounts, but if you have not yet, then when you come to that, you will connect it with law. Refer chapter on internal reconstruction in accounts, that is company accounts. Okay, now to start with, to give you the importance of the chapter, the relevance of the chapter, I will take a balance sheet. I'll take a balance sheet in the traditional T form, old form, where you have the liabilities on one side, the assets on the other side. Today's balance sheet is so small, and not in this form, it is in the vertical form. Sources of funds, application of funds. But whether it is the old balance sheet or the new balance sheet, it has to ultimately tally. Now, this is only for me to illustrate what exactly is this chapter for, what does it do. I am taking a balance sheet like this in the traditional T form, the old Schedule 6, with share capital, reserves and surplus, secured loans, unsecured loans, current liabilities and provisions. Okay, share capital, reserves and surplus. This is the old Schedule 6 form. Secured loans, unsecured loans, current liabilities and provisions. On the asset side, similarly, fixed assets, current assets, loans and advances. Before that, you have investments. So fixed assets, investments, current assets, loans and advances, miscellaneous expenditure to the extent not written off or adjusted. This used to be the form of the balance sheet. Now, just to give life to it, I'll fill in certain numbers. Let us say this is 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. 90 plus 61, 50. You can take it in thousands, lakhs, crores, whatever. I'm just keeping it stupidly simple for us to understand the chapter, the logic behind the chapter. On the asset side, I have fixed assets, of which let us say goodwill is 40. Other fixed assets, 10. Investments, or let me fix up this also, miscellaneous expenditure, to the extent not written off or adjusted, is about 50. So 100 gone. This is, let us say, 20, 20, 10. 70, 50, 70, 90, 100, 150. Balance sheet successfully tallied. Okay, so this is the balance sheet of a company. Beautiful balance sheet, tallied, numbers are all well in place, perfectly in accordance with Schedule 6, Old Companies Act. I needed to put it in this form for you to understand it better. That's why this old form. There is something seriously wrong with this balance sheet. Can you make out what it is? It is tallied. Assets and liabilities are marshaled. Marshal is very important. Nice word. M-A-R-S-H-A-L-L. Marshal means lined up or arranged, either in the ascending or the descending order of liquidity. This is how normally a balance sheet is made by a partnership sole proprietary, not a company. there's something seriously wrong with this balance sheet. And what is that? It is this and this. 40 plus 50 is 90 out of 150. 9 by 15, 3/5, 60% of the assets side are non-assets. Either they are non-assets or intangible assets or fictitious assets. The net worth of the company has got eroded. The asset side of the balance sheet is rusted. 9 by 15 of the assets are either assets which are not there or which are fictitious, they are non-assets, or they appear on the asset side only to complete the double entry. So there's a 50 lakhs of miscellaneous expenditure, debit balance of P&L account, discount on issue of debentures, preliminary expenses, which are all get to be amortized. And there is a goodwill which has come up. Goodwill doesn't have a tangible form. In connection with some purchase, in connection with some transition, business venture, a goodwill has come up. You can't sell this goodwill. You can't sell this miscellaneous expenditure. So the saleable assets, so the realizable assets, or the tangible assets constitute only about 60. If you call it in lakhs, 60 lakhs. They might be readily saleable, but most of them look like they are current assets. Which means it is required for working capital. Strictly speaking, long-term assets is only an investment of 20. And this is not even an investment company. Now, if I ask the accountant, what is this? The balance sheet on what are you planning? Your network has been eaten up by termites. Network has eroded. Solidity of the company has evaporated. It is unhealthy, it's unhygienic. The accountant will tell you, don't worry, sir. These things, this 40 or 50, 90, over the next 10 years, I will write it off. 9 lakhs, 9 lakhs, 9 lakhs, 9 lakhs every year if I do it for 10 years, that 90 will vanish, but that will take me 10 years to remove these two from the balance sheet. That is where this chapter comes into picture, where you cannot wait for these 10 years. If this company gets an offer for a joint venture or a collaboration, where the company has to say yes or no within the next 1 month, this balance sheet will portray a horrible picture. The joint venturer will withdraw, and this company might lose a golden opportunity. Remember, this company is dynamic. Business is dynamic. Anything can happen tomorrow. By tomorrow, even today evening. So this kind of a balance sheet, this balance sheet is presenting a very unhealthy picture. How do you repair this? How do you rectify this? Is the next part of our chapter. Alteration of share capital and reduction of share capital. Now, in other words, in accounting language, I have to. And what balances are they showing? Debit balances. If I have to throw away something which is showing a debit balance, I have to credit it. Crediting it, what will you debit is the issue. For example, if I have to credit goodwill of 40 lakhs, can you debit it with any other asset? Will somebody buy it from you? Will somebody give me cash for it? Cash account to goodwill account. Then I have no problem. But it can't be. You can't debit any other asset also. Nobody will exchange this goodwill for a tangible asset. It has come up for various reasons. Similarly here, if I have to credit this, I cannot debit any asset, that is sure. To the problem that if I have to credit these two, I forget the assets when I come to the liabilities. Will my current liabilities and provisions, my short-term creditors agree? They agree. This is your problem. They do not allow debit of this 10 lakhs to credit this. Similarly, unsecured loans. We are already unsecured. We can reduce our liability, our owings from you. They will not agree. Secured loans. Creditors, not creditors, secured lenders. They will not agree. So ultimately, it boils down to these two. My shareholders only have to. And with what face will the directors go to the shareholders? You can't go and tell the shareholders, we have destroyed your net worth. We have destroyed your capital. The shareholders will slip for them. You're stuck, but you have to tell the truth. If the directors don't say it, the auditors will say it. Financial position and profitability show a true and fair view, but it is not healthy. Because as per your CARO auditing, section 141, yes, 143, duties of an auditor, reporting duties of a company auditor. The auditor has to inform the members of the health of the company. Auditor will say the truth, he doesn't have to bother. So the directors don't tell the shareholders, the auditors will tell. So I have to compromise with my shareholders. And what will happen by doing that? You will credit these rusted assets and debit a liability. The balance sheet will come down to a new low. It will tally and come down. Proportionate assets to a new low. 150 on both sides might become about 130. 90 sides. This is what we are going to do in this chapter. It is called reconciliation because you are rearranging your capital structure. And it is called internal reconstruction. My internal people will agree to it. It is not external structure. If the shareholders also do not agree to this, there are only two: merge the company or close down. This trend is not good. If these are also recovered at less than book values, the company will not have any assets which are worth the name. So this is called internal reconstruction or capital reconstruction. A company is trying to window display. A company is trying to window dress its balance sheet to show a rosier picture by making compromises here and there. You're trying to cover up an unhealthy picture. You're trying to push all the dirt under the doormat. Since you are dealing with the balance sheet and maybe the P&L account partially, accountancy has a because of company law. So company law dictates company accounting. This is what I told you before. Whatever you do in company accounts is because of company law. Capital reserve account, securities premium account, disclosure in the balance sheet, accounting standard, whatever is in accounts, it's a direct impact of company law. Company law asks you to do it, that is why you do. So why you do something, company law tells you. How you do something, company accounts does. So this is the chapter, this is the situation we are trying to resurrect or correct or repair through alteration of share capital. In fact, we have been dealing with two things. One is alteration and one is reduction. Okay, now give it an introduction, give it an introductory paragraph. When a company when a company when a company identifies when a company identifies erosion of net worth, EROSION, when a company identifies erosion of net worth, displayed by displayed by shareholders funds not being adequately represented, shareholders funds not being adequately represented by tangible or real assets, by tangible or real assets, comma, a company may internally now it should be fine. Amma will clear you. A company may, what did I say? A company may reconstruct. A company may reconstruct the balance sheet or or its financial position. The company may reconstruct its balance sheet or its financial position by by an alteration or reduction of its share capital. Alteration or reduction of share capital. Yeah, so am I audible now? Right, so we continue. I was just mentioning that a company can improve its financial position or the balance sheet by resorting to restructuring or reconstructing its balance sheet or its financial position. Okay, now in the next line, section 61 section 61 deals with section 61 deals with alteration of capital. Section 61 deals with alteration of capital, and section 66 with reduction of capital. Section 66 deals with reduction of capital. Okay, full stop. In the next slide. Therefore, reconstruction, internal reconstruction results in a window dressing or a window display, window dressing or a window display technique arising out of the elimination or writing off, elimination or writing off of intangible fictitious or non-assets Okay, so the ultimate objective is this. I want to remove these things from the balance sheet. A journal entry is an accounting entry in which neither the debit nor the credit is cash or bank. Because if the debit or the credit is either cash or bank, we strictly speaking do not call it a journal entry. It becomes a receipt entry or a payment entry. And any journal entry can be passed. In fact, this is how we teach our foundation students accountancy, the introduction to accountancy. We explain or brief the golden rule of accounting, and in maybe the first week, give transaction after transaction and ask them to journalize. 100 transactions, 150 transactions, journalize them and give a narration. When I teach my foundation students accountancy, if at all I do, I used to do it once upon a time. When I teach my kids accounting, the first week is full of transactions, making them journalize, applying the rules. The second week, in the second week, I give them the journal entry and ask them to tell me the transaction. That is tough. There are certain cases where even you may find it difficult. For example, if I say furniture account debtor to share capital account, it is nothing but furniture acquired, giving equity shares, which is issue of capital for consideration other than cash. Suppose I reverse it. Share capital account related to furniture account. It means that some shareholders' share capital has been redeemed, repaid, giving him a piece of furniture. Journal entry. So any account can be debited, any account can be credited. As long as it is not cash or bank, it won't affect anyone. These are what we call the book entries. So for a chartered accountant, book entries are more dangerous. So you will be very careful with the journal entry. So basically the idea is to remove assets which are not assets at all, the rusted assets, so that some liability can be debited to remove them. And you reverse it, bring the balance sheet to a new low. Now, we will be doing it in a particular format. In this part of the chapter, we will be dividing the page into two parts and then deal with it. So I mentioned and below that mention section 61. The other half of the page, reduction of share capital, and mention in brackets section 66. Alteration of share capital. Section 66, reduction of share capital. Divide your page into two parts. Of course, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 pages you have to follow this thought. So 2 pages you can rule it, and then we start. So on the left side, alteration of share capital, section 61. On the right side, reduction of share capital, section 66. Okay, now I am almost going to give it to you verbatim. How the section says. Again, like we've been doing with the other provisions also. Let's learn the section first. Learn the rules of the game, then play the game. So alteration of share capital, section 61, reduction of share capital, section 66. Alright, now let us finish the left side first. The left side is relatively innocent. It doesn't have anything to do with the balance sheet which I took as an example. In other words, the highlighted in the example balance sheet that I put is solved not by section 61 but by section 66. This is all adjustments which apply in a situation where things are not that bad. So the gravity of the situation will decide which plan of action is suitable for a company. Okay, understand it first before you take it down. Section 61 allows a company to alter its share capital 5 methods. provided this is approved by the articles of association, because otherwise it could be fun. In other words, section 61 goes by the wordings. A company may, if so authorized by its articles, alter its share capital in any of the following ways. There are 5 methods of altering share capital. The first one is increasing the authorized capital. Articles alter its share capital in any of the following ways. Number one, increasing. So one thing is clear. Decreasing is here. Share capital reduction is 66. So that means anything other than reduction is alteration. So the company may increase its authorized capital. Number one. Similarly, a company may convert its shares into stock or the vice versa. Stock is a terminology you have to learn. Stock is not your inventory here. Or issue. So the conversion of shares into stock or reconversion of stock into shares is a mode of alteration of capital. If the company is authorized by its article, because otherwise you have to amend the articles first. Consolidating or consolidation of shares of smaller amount into shares of larger amount or denomination. 10 രൂപയുടെ ഷെയറൊക്കെ 20 രൂപയുടെ ഷെയറൊക്കെ 50 രൂപയുടെ ഷെയർ 100 രൂപയുടെ ഷെയർ. So the number of shares will reduce. For example, if a company shares of 10 each, you can convert this or consolidate this as 550,000 shares of rupees 20 each. What is happening?